got it.
What's good, YouTube? Welcome back to MANIACITV, man. Today we got Big Durk, Lil Durk's legendary father from the Hip Hop Daily YouTube channel, man. Shout out Hip Hop Daily, man. Y'all head on over and give him a sub. Y'all know we rock with the content heavy on the channel, man. So listen, Big Durk, man. I know a little bit about Lil Durk's dad. I remember when Durk first came into the industry, everybody always said just how valid and how respected Big Durk was in the streets. He was locked up at that time. I believe he was locked up at that time. He recently got out, man. So we about to get more in tune with Big Durk, man. Let's get it.
Lil Durk is one of the hottest artists in the game right now and has been around for almost a decade. But only real fans know that before Lil Durk was running the rap game, his father Big Durk was running the streets of Chicago.
Big facts.
Here's a closer look at the story of Big Durk, Lil Durk's legendary father. Lil Durk grew up in the Inglewood neighborhood in the south side of Chicago. His father, Dante Banks, aka Big Durk, was sentenced to life in prison when the rapper was only 7 months old for running a major crack empire. Eventually, Big Durk would get a second chance at life and be released in time to reunite with his superstar son, but not before spending more than 25 years in a federal prison. Big Durk also grew up in the Inglewood neighborhood of Chicago. He was one of 10 children, including 7 boys and 3 girls, and growing up, his mother was addicted to drugs. They moved around a lot and never found a stable place to live for too long. His grandmother lived in Inglewood, and that's where he was first exposed to the street life. In an interview with Cred Talks TV, Big Durk said that growing up in Inglewood was both hard and exciting at the same time.
But overall, you know, coming up in Inglewood was hard and exciting at the same time.
He saw the hustlers, gamblers, prostitutes, and everyone else doing what they had to do to survive, and young Dante would become fascinated with that lifestyle.
I'm saying, though, it's a lot of money to be made out in the streets, man. Think about it, though, man. So he went to prison when Lil Durk was 7 months old. Imagine, you go to prison, let's say you have a baby, and they only a few months old. Can't even walk yet. You get out, they a megastar, multi-millionaire. Imagine. Can you imagine? Come on, man.
And everyone else doing what
and he stayed solid the whole 25. Real niggas.
They had to do to survive, and young Dante would become fascinated with that lifestyle. He said that he used to watch Gamblers like it was a TV show because he knew if he sat there long enough, someone would get shot, stabbed, or beat up.
Because I knew if I sit there and watch them long enough, it was just like TV. Someone in the end gonna get shot, someone gonna get stabbed, someone gonna get whooped, because in the end, someone is gonna be cheap.
His older brothers would fall victim to that lifestyle before he...
That's some real shit, though. Like, growing up in the projects, you knew it was inevitable that some nigga was about to get all bitter about losing his bucks, and then somebody end up getting shot, getting their ass beat, jumped, whatever, thrown in the trunk, car drive off. Something always happened with that shit. Grams used to always tell us, come on, get in the house. Street lights on, get in the house. You don't need to see none of this.
Because in the end, someone is going to be cheap.
His older brothers would fall victim to that lifestyle before he did and would end up getting locked up, leaving Big Durk to be the man of the house when he was only about 12 years old. He said that the moment he turned from Dante Banks into Big Durk was when one day he came home from school and all of his family stuff had been moved out onto the lawn. He saw his mother crying and begging the neighbors for a place to stay, and that's when he decided that he had to learn how to make his own money and become successful. But growing up in a wild neighborhood like Inglewood, there weren't many ways to make money, especially when you're still just a kid. So he got involved in the drug game to support himself. He had a cousin who was a plug, so he went to her and asked for some work so he could start hustling. He was only about 13 or 14 at the time, but she still started him off with an 8-ball of coke. As he stood on the corner in the freezing cold trying to sell that 8-ball, he says that was the moment he transformed from Dante Banks into Big Durk. He attended Paul Robeson High School on 69th and Normal, but he only went to please his grandmother and just barely graduated. But high school was also where he started getting exposed to gang culture. He said that the school was mostly BD, but his neighborhood was primarily GDs. Plus, there were some Black P Stones and Vice Lords on the outskirts. He ended up joining the GDs because they were the people he hung around the most.
And it's so crazy. This happens a lot. This happens a lot more than you may think, where, you know, where the OG was one gang and, you know, and they kids repped a completely different gang. Like Durk, obviously everybody know Durk beefing with the GDs now. I don't know, man. It's crazy. It happens more than you think, though, man. That's crazy.
Floors on that.
It's like, because normally you would think about it like Durk was probably meant to be GD, but, you know, where Durk grew up, you know, he was rocking with the BDs out there now.
But his neighborhood was primarily GDs. Plus, there were some Black P Stones and Vice Lords on the outskirts. He ended up joining the GDs because they were the people he hung around the most. He was already in the streets hustling and had built a crew that was respected in the neighborhood. But after linking up with the GDs, Big Durk was able to bring his operation to a whole new level. He had so much influence in his neighborhood that he was selected to be the main shot caller for the area. This meant that he got to meet with the founder of the gang,
Larry Hoover, man. Free that nigga Larry Hoover, man.
The Gangsta Disciples were founded in the south side of Chicago in 1965 by Larry Hoover and David Barksdale. Hoover had a gang called the Supreme Gangsters, and Barksdale was one of the founders of the Black Disciples. They united in 1969 to form the Black Gangsta Disciple Nation, but eventually broke off from each other and formed two separate gangs, the Gangsta Disciples and the Black Disciples, who are now bitter enemies. Larry Hoover maintained control of the Gangsta Disciples, who now operates across 10 cities in 31 states, primarily in the South and Midwest. In 1997, Hoover will be sentenced to 150 to 200 years in prison for the 1973 murder of a 19-year-old drug dealer named William Pookie Young.
This nigga said 150 to 250 years in prison? That's crazy, man. You know, the Gangsta Disciples, man, like growing up in Milwaukee, it's a whole lot of Gangsta Disciples. When I went to school, my school was predominantly, I say it was half and half. You had Gangsta Disciples and Vice Lord. We didn't have really many Crips in my school. There was probably like a handful of Bloods, but it was mostly Gangsta Disciple, I will say. Between Gangsta Disciples and Vice Lords, but I think Gangsta Disciples outnumbered them. It was so many. It's so many Gangsta Disciples in the Midwest. So many of them, man. And can you imagine? It's like, you know, obviously, you know, the war on drugs is what amplified the beef with the BDs and the GDs. And, you know, nowadays, you know, the war on drugs is over. Now it's just, you know, about, you know, just the disrespect is what's kind of furthering adding fuel to the fire in this beef nowadays. You know, it's just youngins out there. They trying to prove they sell today, you know, today block and they loyalty now. It's different now.
50 to 200 years in prison for the 1973 murder of a 19-year-old drug dealer named William Pookie Young, also for his role as leader of the Gangsta Disciples.
The 44-year-old acknowledged leader of the Black Gangster Disciples has been in prison since 1973 for a drug-related murder.
He's currently serving 6 life sentences at the ADX Florence prison, a maximum security prison that also houses inmates like El Chapo and the Unabomber. But even while behind bars, Larry Hoover continued to run the massive gang empire he built before his incarceration. So Big Durk was taking direction from the very top of the food chain. The two would meet to discuss business and ended up forming a solid relationship.
That's real.
This relationship would allow Durk to take his drug operation to a new level and brought a lot more structure and manpower to his organization. But the increase in volume also came with more risk, and Big Durk had a few close calls even before he was locked up. He described one incident where there was a drought or a shortage of product, so he had to pick up from a source that he knew was a bit sketchy. Police ended up catching on to him, but he was driving a souped up 64 Malibu and was able to lose him by speeding off. He says that he was driving so fast down a one-way street that if anyone stepped outside or opened the door, he would have been finished. He also had a sister with him at the time, and after the police chase, he felt bad about risking her life along with his own. Big Durk also claims that the war between the BDs and GDs actually started in his neighborhood. He says that it all started over a dispute over territory. He grew up with one of the leaders of the BDs, Jerome Shorty Freeman, so they had been cool with each other, even though they were part of different gangs. But eventually, it came time to divide up the neighborhood because of their affiliations, and the Freemans felt they were entitled to more territory than Big Durk and the GDs. They wouldn't negotiate when Big Durk and his people pushed back, and this is what sparked the deadly war that continues to this day. But despite all the violence and close calls with the police,
so it was about territory. That's crazy. You know, then at that time too, you know, drugs obviously played a big part in this. That's crazy, man. So the GDs and BDs weren't even really meant to beef. It was just, it's crazy, like, cause this goes back probably to when my mom's was a baby type shit. Like, this is, man,
Big
a lot of history with this
Durk
shit.
says that he never thought the money would ever stop because he was running an airtight operation. He said that he was on the streets 24/7, but the cops were only out there 8 hours a day. So there was no way they would ever catch up to him because he was always a step ahead. He thought that maybe he'd eventually retire from the game, but never thought he'd actually get caught. Despite his careful planning and hustler mentality, the police would eventually catch up with him. Big Durk would be arrested for distribution of cocaine and sentenced to life in prison in 1994. He was accused of being the primary organizer of a crack cocaine empire that lasted from the fall of 1991 to May of 93. Durk would even go as far as sourcing the cocaine and then cooking it into crack himself, which he would then bag for individual sale. He had a huge network of dealers who would help him push the product on the streets and even count the money for him. His top men, Robert Shipp, Mario Dunlop, and Alton Mills, would be arrested along with him and also receive life sentences for their participation in the drug trafficking ring. Their empire all came crashing down after a woman named Tasha Woods, who was involved in overseeing the street sales of the crack, agreed to testify against him in court.
That's why you don't do business with women. Females, listen, I love y'all. But this is why you don't do business with the females. Because, listen, they too pretty to go to jail. They gon' tell. Oh, man.
Tasha Woods, who was involved in overseeing the street sales of the crack, agreed to testify against him in court. What made the snitching even worse was that Tasha was Mario's girlfriend and Big Durk's blood cousin.
Oh, no. Family, too. It be your own people. It be your own people, man. It's like what Big Durk was doing, man, is what probably like 80%, 85, fuck it, 90% of the rap game be rapping about that they claim they be doing. Back then, niggas was really out here living like that. His own cuzzo took him out. I wonder if he ever forgave her.
Involved in overseeing the street sales of the crack, agreed to testify against him in court. What made the snitching even worse was that Tasha was Mario's girlfriend and Big Durk's blood cousin.
Tough.
After learning about Big Durk's massive drug operation, they began following his top men. This eventually led them to get into a high-speed chase with Alton Mills, who allegedly threw half a kilo of coke out the window of his car. In addition to that, the police were able to intercept a phone call made by Big Durk on the day Mills was arrested, where he repeatedly asked if he had the candy. This phone call was enough for the feds to get a warrant to search a storage unit being rented by Big Durk in Lansing, Illinois, where they uncovered $1 million in cash and 10 kilos of cocaine. Durk and his associates were immediately arrested and were charged with 2 counts of knowingly and intentionally conspiring with others to possess cocaine with intent to distribute. At the time, the punishment for selling crack cocaine was way more severe than selling powder cocaine, so Big Durk was looking at a mandatory minimum of 30 years in prison.
Shit.
Authorities were able to learn even more about the scale of Big Durk's operation after 2 of his suppliers also snitched and testified at trial that they had delivered more than 85 kilos of cocaine to Big Durk between fall 1991 and May 1993.
Everybody was telling.
As a result, the 2 suppliers were handed sentences of 11.5 years and 9 years, while Big Durk and his people were given life sentences. Lil Durk later suggested in interviews that the reason his father got such a harsh sentence is that they wanted him to flip on Larry Hoover, but he refused. Throughout his career, Lil Durk would praise his father for staying solid and not ratting his people out.
That's real. That's real, because they probably wouldn't have, man, listen. He probably would have got half of that sentence if he would have cooperated and told on Larry. But he said, fuck it, I'm about to take the whole 30 piece. Give me the whole 30 piece then, fuck it. That's some real nigga shit. Not many people can do that. When you faced with that adversity and that pressure, not many people can do that.
Refused. Throughout his career, Lil Durk would praise his father for staying solid and not ratting his people out, even if it meant spending the rest of his life behind bars. So, Big Durk kept it solid and took the life sentence he was given at just 25 years old. Even the judge said that he felt bad about handing down such a harsh sentence for a non-violent drug crime. But in the early 90s, the feds were going hard trying to shut down crack dealers. So the judge was forced to go along with the mandatory minimums set by the law. Even Big Durk's girlfriend ended up getting sentenced to 10 years for her involvement in the operation. But while he was locked up,
It's crazy though, because in the 90s, like that crack and all that stuff, that was a huge thing. That was the biggest thing that police was trying to like get down on, man. Everybody was selling. Teachers, the preacher, lunch lady, everybody was selling coke to the kids, man. Come on.
he never abandoned his kids. Lil Durk has said in interviews that growing up, he wanted to be just like his father and that he used to talk to him on the phone every day. Big Durk used to encourage his kids to stay out of the streets and avoid the mistakes that cost him his own freedom. That's part of the reason that Durk went so hard with his music career and tried his best to avoid the path that his father went down. Growing up in a wild city like Chicago, sometimes you get sucked into the street life even if you don't want to. But Durk could always rely on his father for advice when he was caught up in a situation. While in prison, Big Durk eventually converted to Islam and did his best to distance himself from gang culture and the activities that put him in prison in the first place. All his good behavior would eventually pay off, and in 2019, he would be released from prison on an appeal after nearly spending 25 years behind bars. On February 12, 2019, Lil Durk tweeted, "Big Durk home," letting the world know that his father was finally free from jail. He and his sons would reunite for the first time outside the confines of a federal penitentiary and could finally enjoy all the success that had come from his son's music career. Since his release, Big Durk has stayed away from the spotlight and has instead dedicated his time to mentoring the youth as a life coach with Chicago CRED, a nonprofit aimed at reducing gun violence in the city through outreach, counseling, and mentorship.
I respect that.
So Big Durk is taking a second chance at life he's been given and using it to do something positive. Even though he couldn't be there for his son physically because of his prison sentence, he still helped Lil Durk make it out of the streets of Chicago and become a rap star by teaching him the lessons he learned at the top of the drug game and how to avoid the fate that took his freedom. It seems to have worked because Lil Durk is now one of the hottest rappers in the game, who was recently credited with having more entries on the Billboard Hot 100 for this year than any other artist in music. Big Durk ran the streets so that Lil Durk could run the music industry, and in the end, they were able to reunite and share all the success together. If you thought this video was crazy,
RPD thing, man. RPD thing for sure, man. Big Durk, man. Listen, man. I honestly didn't know a lot of this about him. I didn't know like he was affiliated with the GDs like that, man. You know, but hey, that shit crazy, man. He held it down, stayed solid. He didn't tell. Real nigga, man. Big Durk, Lil Durk's legendary father. Link down below in the description for y'all to check it out in its entirety, uninterrupted. If y'all new to the channel, y'all rock with me. Want daily reaction videos, man, hit that subscribe button for me. Until the next video, I'll see y'all then. Thank you for watching MANIACITV. I'm out.
I ain't gotta do too much. I swear that these niggas, they be doing too much. I ain't gotta